Okay, welcome everybody to today's webinar, Claiming the 2021 Expanded Child Tax Credit and Other Tax Credits webinar. I'm excited to be here with you today. This is being done in partnership with the Georgia Department of Public Health and their Community Health Worker Initiative program. Big thanks to Dana Brooks and Carissa Jones over at that program for collaborating with us and helping us bring this to you. You can feel free to add any questions in the Q&A or chat. We will have time for Q&A at the end. So if I don't get to your question immediately, don't worry, we'll take a look at those towards the end. Next slide. So I am coming to you from the Coalition on Human Needs, which is an alliance of national groups that includes service providers, faith groups, policy experts, labor, civil rights, and other advocates. And their mission is to advocate at the federal level to meet the needs of people with low incomes and increase knowledge of positive outcomes from current or proposed programs. And we are working in partnership with the Partnership for America's Children. This is an organization with over 50 members that have multi-issue child advocacy, child advocacy organizations across 40 states. And their mission is to support its network of state and community child advocacy organizations in effective advocacy. Next slide. So let's just get right to it. What is the expanded child tax credit? So in the child tax credit, as it is right now, as was expanded in 2021, means more money and more eligible families than previously. The credit is at $3,600 per child, 0 to 5, and $3,000 per child ages 6 through 17. So this previously was only $2,000 for all children, and the cutoff was through age 16. So for the tax year 2021, this has been greatly increased and made available to more children than ever before. There are no minimum income requirements. So families with no earned income are eligible for the full credit. And previously you had to have earned a certain amount of income to receive the credit, but now families who have no income, have no tax obligations, can actually still file to get the credit. And we'll go through obviously how to do that and what that looks like as well. Families, the credit started being dispersed last summer. So families were eligible to receive the first half of the CTC in 2021 and half when they filed their taxes this year, or the full credit if they hadn't gotten any advance payments in 2021. So beginning in July of 2021, the government automatically started sending payments to families. Some of you might be familiar with this, have maybe even received it yourselves or know other people who have. But if you had filed taxes in 2020, 2019, you were already in the system, and if you had filed and had children on your return, the government automatically sent a monthly payment for those children from July to December. There were some exceptions to this. Some people had to take a couple extra steps because perhaps they hadn't filed the year before. And then they went through getctc.org, which we'll also talk about. And then they also claimed their credit through that option up through the last payment was December 15th. And then that was only half of the credit. And then people could get the second half of the credit by filing a 2018 tax return. Or if they hadn't gotten any of the credit at all and had only found out about this after December 15th, they could get the full credit through a tax return. Next slide. So how much money is actually at stake? So this is an example of what could possibly be on the table for families. If we're looking at a family with a 2-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 7-year-old, in total for the 2021 CTC, the family would receive $10,200. And in addition, the family may qualify for additional money through stimulus payments and other state or federal tax credits. But just the CTC alone, you can see that it's a lot of money available to parents through the expansion. Next slide. And who is eligible for the 2021 CTC and how do they claim it? So an adult may have a Social Security number or an individual taxpayer identification number to claim the CTC, but the children must have social security numbers, and those social security numbers must be valid for employment. The dependent must be the person's child, including adopted, grandchild, or stepchild, younger sibling, step sibling, half sibling, or other descendant, or a foster child placed by a government agency. The dependent must have lived with the parent in the US for more than half the year. So that's 6 months and 1 day. And there are some exceptions, like babies who were born in the second half of 2021 that wouldn't need that 6-month time period. But for the most part, a child has to be living with the parent or parents claiming the child for at least 6 months and a day. And also the dependent or the child did not provide over half of their own support in 2021. How do families claim the 2021 CTC? So as we mentioned, in 2021, most families automatically received an advanced CTC payment of $250 to $300 per child per month from July through December. Families who were not required to file taxes or didn't do so in 2019 or 2020 for other reasons had to take steps to receive the advanced payments. And that was what I mentioned about going through the simplified portal, getctc.org. Everyone will need to file tax returns this year to receive the second half or full amount of the 2021 CTC. And now that we are post-tax season, post April 18th, the option also as well to file on getctc.org is also available for individuals who don't have a tax filing obligation. So the most important thing to get out of this webinar today is to know that even though tax day has passed, families can still claim the CTC. If a family is not required to file taxes based on their income, they can still file without penalty. If they are required to file a tax return, but are actually due a refund, they can also still now file without a penalty. And there's actually a 3-year window to claim any tax credits they are owed. So as of right now, that expansion of the CTC is only applying for tax year 2021. We're not sure it's going to be available for next tax year, but so there is a 3-year window, but we want to emphasize, and when we get to the getctc.org part, that the simplified portal, which makes it really, makes it much easier for families who don't owe taxes to file, will only be available through the fall of this year at this time. Next slide. So getctc.org, what is it? It's a simplified filing tool that helps you claim the CTC and a third stimulus payment if a family hasn't already. It was created by Code for America and is an IRS approved official e-file provider. It's available in English and Spanish. It's mobile friendly. It has chat support available. Most individuals can finish in less than 15 minutes, and getctc.org is open through mid-November. I see a couple of Q&As. Let me look here. Yes, we will share the PowerPoint. You'll get a follow-up email, so you'll get the full PowerPoint when we're done. I see a question for qualifying child, not qualifying relative, right? But if you have a balance due and haven't filed, we'll get to that. So qualifying child, if you can specify a little more what you mean, do you mean perhaps a child that's like a niece, nephew, anything like that? If the person has custody of that child, or like a grandparent with a grandchild, and they've lived with them for 6 months and a day, that would count. And they're 17 or younger, they would count, and nobody else is claiming the child. So next slide. So who can use getctc.org as opposed to doing a full paper return? It can be used if you have not yet filed a 2021 tax return. The income thresholds are under $12,550 for a single person, $18,800 for a head of household, and $25,100 married filing jointly. These are incomes in 2021. And these are the income thresholds actually that make you that you don't have to file a tax return for. just for clarity on that. You have to have earned less than $400 in self-employment income. As I mentioned, you have to have a social security number or individual taxpayer ID number, and children you claim need to have social security numbers. You must have lived in the 50 states or DC or be on a US military facility, and did not have advanced premium tax credits. And these are credits that somebody received through their monthly health insurance through the exchange. So we're going to watch a quick video right now on the demo of getctc.org. And you can see at the top, we actually have a special getctc.org link for everyone to use in this webinar. It's getctc.org/GeorgiaCHW. I'm going to put that in the chat as well. But we ask that you use that particular link, save it, bookmark it, because what it will help us do, and we can share with the people at Department of Public Health, it's going to help us see how many people you are able to help and reach in what parts of Georgia, and it'll be some really great info that we can share back with you and share it back with the DPH. So I'm going to pop that in the link in the chat right now, and Zoe's going to play the video for us.
This video will show you how to use the 2022 edition of Code for America's simplified tax filing portal, GetCTC. GetCTC allows families without a tax filing obligation to file a simplified 2021 tax return to access the child tax credit and the third stimulus payment. GetCTC e-files a simplified return directly with the IRS. It's mobile-friendly, accessible, available in both English and Spanish, and chat assistance is available at any point in the process. People without children can use it too, just to access the third stimulus payment. This is what GetCTC looks like at our launch in May 2022. Note that we constantly update the tool in response to user feedback, so it may look a little different later in the year. First, GetCTC will go through a few steps to confirm that it's the right tool for me. The tool asks first how I'm filing my return, single or married. Then the tool confirms that the IRS allows me to use simplified filing, since households with higher incomes or other special circumstances, like self-employment income, are required to file a full return. If, for example, I'm not sure what counts as self-employment income, additional information is available below. GetCTC will then warn me that I could get even more money by filing a full return, since I can't get the EITC or state credits from this tool. To get the first two stimulus payments, I would have to file a 2020 tax return. Those who choose to file a full return or back taxes are sent to Get Your Refund, which allows families to file using Vita services. For now, I'll opt to continue with this tool. Next, GetCTC will ask me a few other questions to confirm I'm eligible to use the tool. It lists a few additional and rare scenarios that GetCTC does not support, and will ask whether I already filed a 2021 return this year. If I already submitted a return, the IRS would reject a new one I filed through this tool. Then, GetCTC will confirm I lived in the 50 states, DC, or a US military facility last year, since overseas and territory residents are currently not eligible to use simplified filing. Finally, it will confirm that no one can claim me as a dependent, since that would make me ineligible for the CTC and stimulus checks. I've now confirmed I'm eligible to use GetCTC. In the next section, GetCTC asks for some basic information about me. I'll enter my name, date of birth, and social security number. Note that I could also enter an ITIN. As required by the IRS, GetCTC asks for my phone number. It also asks if I was a member of the Armed Forces in 2021, since that could impact the amount of my recovery rebate credit. As required by the IRS, GetCTC asks if I am legally blind. Finally, GetCTC asks me to agree to the privacy policy. Then the tool will check if I filed a 2020 return. If I did, GetCTC would collect my 2020 adjusted gross income, which the IRS requires from filers for authentication purposes. In this case, I'll say that I didn't file last year. On this page, we ask clients the contact method we can use to best reach them. Note, GetCTC does not require clients to create an account and does not require them to have an email address. Clients simply have to sign up using their email or their phone. In this case, I'll choose to sign up by phone. GetCTC will send me a 6-digit code that I must enter to confirm it's mine. For the purposes of this demo, I'll enter a fake code on this page. Note that if I don't finish my return in one sitting, I can log back in and continue using this contact method. Next, if I were filing married, GetCTC would collect needed information about my spouse, their name, date of birth, social security number or ITIN, and 2020 adjusted gross income, if applicable. In this case, I'm filing single, so GetCTC will skip this section. In the next section, GetCTC allows me to list my 2021 dependents. Rather than assume I've read all the tax rules, GetCTC asks me all the key questions I need to answer to make sure I can claim my dependents. Keep in mind that the pages clients see in this section very much depend on the answers they provide. First, I'll enter my dependent's basic information: name, date of birth, relationship to me, and SSN or ATIN. We ask about one specific scenario to confirm basic eligibility. Next, GetCTC will ask me to confirm a few more criteria. If at any point my dependent doesn't meet the main criterion, GetCTC will ask whether one or more valid exceptions apply. Behind the scenes, GetCTC will determine which credits my dependent is eligible for. Finally, GetCTC will show me a list of my dependents, including whether they are eligible for CTC or only for the third stimulus payment. I can keep repeating this process until all my dependents are recorded. For now, I'll say I only have one dependent. In the next section, GetCTC will determine my credit amounts. First, GetCTC will figure out how much CTC I can claim. The IRS requires families to report how much advanced CTC they received last year and subtract this from their total credit. GetCTC makes this process easier by calculating how much families should have received based on the dependents they provided earlier. I can say that I got this amount, a different amount, or no payment at all. In this case, I'll say I got the estimated amount. GetCTC calculates the remaining CTC available to me. Next, GetCTC will figure out how much recovery rebate credit I can claim, that is, the third stimulus payment. As with CTC, the IRS requires families to report how much they received last year. Again, GetCTC will display how much I should have received based on my family structure. In this case, I'll say I got a different amount. GetCTC will ask me to enter what I received and provide some tips about where to find this information. I'll say in this case that I received $200. GetCTC will then let me review the amount I'm claiming. Finally, GetCTC will collect my payment information and allow me to review and submit my return. I can select direct deposit or a mailed check. In this case, I'll select direct deposit. GetCTC asks me to confirm that my name is on the bank account, so the payment is not rejected. I'll provide my routing number and my account number. And finally, we'll have the chance to confirm my information. The IRS also requires that I provide my mailing address. GetCTC allows me to enter identity protection pins for anyone in my family who has one, and provides more information about what an IP pin is. I'll say that no one in my family has an IP pin. Now, I can review all the information I've submitted and go back to edit anything that's wrong. On this page, as required by the IRS, I set a 5-digit PIN that I can use to authenticate when I file next year. On the next page, I'll see a final summary of the payments I am claiming. Next, I have the option to submit my driver's license information and my spouse's if I were filing married. Especially for clients without a tax filing history, the IRS may process returns and issue refunds faster if this information is submitted, and we recommend clients provide it if possible, but it is not required. If I don't have a driver's license or don't want to provide the information, I can skip this page. Finally, I'll agree to our terms on the last page, and I'll file. Just like that, I've filed my simplified return. GetCTC will alert me within a couple days whether my return has been accepted or rejected by the IRS. Most clients hear within a few hours. If my return was rejected, GetCTC will provide me with a plain language explanation of why, and allow me to log back in and resubmit my return. You can find GetCTC at getctc.org. For more resources about the CTC and stimulus payments, visit getctc.org/navigators.
Great. Thank you, Zoe. Okay, I saw a quick question, here. Can the Afghan parolees file for these child credits? We've gotten this question a lot. So I think a lot of the parolees came in August or even July, in August. So if they don't meet the 6-month and 1-day requirement, they don't qualify. It's different if perhaps they had a child here after they got here, before the end of 2021. But if it's for a parolee that came with their children and it was after the 6-month mark and they didn't spend 6 months and a day in the US, they can't file for the credit. In the future, if the credit gets extended, they will be able to, but at this time for 2021, no. Okay, next slide. So who might file a full tax return rather than file through getctc.org? So we went through getctc.org. I also put that link in the chat. So you'll have that. Again, all of the resources I'm sharing with you today will be in a follow-up email as well. But perhaps somebody is above the income threshold and doesn't qualify to go through getctc.org. They would then have to file for the full return, and they could use getyourrefund.org. So they could actually still go through getctc.org. You can ignore the California income tax credit that actually isn't supposed to be there. That was for a separate webinar in California. But they would go through getyourrefund.org. Or I'm sorry, they would start at getctc.org and actually redirect them to getyourrefund.org, where they can file for do different options for a full file return there as well. Next slide. So speaking of filing a full return, what are people's options in terms of accessing free tax assistance and where to go? So the first thing is that you can identify actually local VITA sites for people you're helping through at getyourrefund.org. That's the link there as well. I also, and I'll show this in a second, I have a full list of VITA sites across various centers across Georgia, and you'll get that list so you can call them up. We recommend calling VITA sites before showing up. We know a lot of them close after tax season. Some of them do stay open. So we recommend either calling with your client or telling your client to call ahead of time. As I said, many sites are closed this time of year. And important to let people know as well, married couples must go to any in-person appointments together to file their returns. And at getyourrefund.org, that's also available in English and in Spanish. Individuals also have the access to free do-it-yourself tax filing services. So some people might be fully comfortable doing it on their own, and that's great. Again, there's a limited capacity, so get free virtual tax filing assistance, including the opportunity, I'm sorry, let me try that again. Through getyourrefund.org, you can get free virtual tax filing assistance, including the opportunity to discuss your situation with a tax specialist over the phone. Again, limited capacity, but that is still a resource that's open right now in the post-tax season time of the year. Okay, so what are the other options for free tax assistance? So I've left this in here. First, the AARP Foundation tax aid sites. These are sites that provide free tax assistance for individuals who are 50 or older or have low to moderate incomes. They are actually closed for the year, but our current outreach, our program, this outreach that we're doing is only going through November this year. And as I mentioned, these returns, these credits can be filed for up to 3 years. Keep that in mind, keep that information in mind for when tax season starts. Again, next year, this will be an option. If you're still running into families that maybe didn't know about this or hadn't filed yet, this is another option for free tax filing assistance. There are also the low income taxpayer clinics. These centers help individuals with low incomes who have tax disputes with the IRS. So this is a good place to send people who maybe have some custody issues. Perhaps they are in custody of a child, but the biological parent is still claiming them on their tax return, or any sort of other discrepancies if they haven't received the return, things like that. This is a place where you can contact somebody to see for assistance. And that's the link to their website and how to locate one. Again, all of this will be shared with you in the follow-up emails. I see a question. Can custodial parent relinquish rights to claim this to non-custodial parents? Yes, they can. Essentially, I don't think they necessarily, so let's say, for example, a child is with a grandparent, but it's not not a formal custodial agreement. The child just stays with the grandparent. The parent, as long as the parent isn't also claiming the child, the grandparent can go ahead and file for the CTC. Now, so there doesn't really need to be a formal relinquishing. It has to just be that the biological parents or the custodial parents aren't also claiming the child. Because if somebody who isn't in custody of the child is claiming the child, that there are some other necessary steps to take, like possibly contacting the LITCs, because when the custodial parent, when whoever has the child and is not claiming the credit but decides to claim the credit, when they put that in, they go into the system, it will come back and say somebody's already claiming this child. So I hope that answers that question. I see form 8332 is the form custodial parents can use to release their rights to claim a child as a dependent to the non-custodial parent. The form can be used for current or future tax years. Great, great, thank you for sharing that. It'll get rejected from the IRS. Yes, you answered, thanks. If possible, please share the free tax assistance link here. It will be easier to copy. Sure, I will put that in a moment. So, okay, next slide. So this is just a screenshot of the list of actually this list includes the VITA, the AARP, and LITCs. So, and you can see we had it broken down to 6 main centers in Georgia. So we have Atlanta, Macomb, Athens, Savannah, Valdosta, and Augusta. And I think our interns who did this went out in about a 50 to 100 mile radius. So you will get this as well. So it'll make it easier for you to just be able to have and see what VITA sites are available and call and see who's actually open this time of year. Next slide. We know that some individuals might not be able to access free services, whether it's at VITA or somewhere else. So for free tax assistance, virtual and in person, even though it's available for many families with low incomes, it might not be able to meet everybody's need. And again, there might just, their places might just not be open in its limited capacity at this time of year. If families do decide to use paid tax services, they should be careful that preparers are submitting accurate returns on their behalf. Guidance for individuals using paid tax preparers is at this link. It's from the IRS, and it's a great, like a 10-point question that people can ask paid tax preparers to make sure that they're reputable and that they can trust them and that they will do their returns properly. Next slide. And we also have this that you'll have access to what to bring to a tax appointment. It's just a checklist of what people will need. So this is relevant to people doing, most relevant to people doing the full tax returns, and we have it available in both in English and in Spanish. Next slide. And we'll quickly go over some of the common barriers and concerns that come up, some of the questions. Some of you might have some of these questions, and this might help to answer them. I see one more question in the chat. Do you know if folks can use cell phones or to do virtual visit, or do they need a laptop for whatever platform is used? I believe they can use cell phones for the virtual visits because the getctc.org, both getctc.org and Get Your Refund are mobile friendly. So, okay, next slide. So does receiving the CTC impact other public benefits? So getting this credit will not change any federally funded public benefits that a family receives, like Social Security, SNAP, childcare subsidies, or WIC. Will receiving the CTC affect someone's immigration status or ability to get a green card? The answer to that is no. Under current law, receiving the child tax credit or other tax credits will not affect their immigration status, their ability to get a green card, or their future immigration plans. Use of tax credits is not considered in a public charge determination by U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. Will the IRS share someone's immigration status with other government agencies? The answer to that is also no. The IRS is forbidden to share an individual's tax information with other agencies. There are very limited exceptions to this, and these are related to certain criminal investigations or to determine someone's tax liability. If anyone has concerns about this, if you come across a client who thinks that there might be something going on where they might fall under these limited exceptions, we recommend you referring them to free legal assistance, or even the LITCs is another great place to go to ask that question. Slide. Let me just drink some water quickly. Okay. So can parents, caregivers claim the CTC using individual taxpayer identification numbers or ITINs? So as we mentioned, yes, adults with social security numbers or ITINs can claim the CTC for children who have social security numbers. If you have a current ITIN, you can still file to claim the CTC and potentially other credits. We'll get to that in a second actually. But unfortunately, if you have never had an ITIN and did not apply for a tax filing extension by April 18th of this year, you can no longer claim the 2021 CTC. Families can still apply for ITINs to file taxes and potentially claim credits in future years. But if they've never had an ITIN, even if it's expired, they can no longer access the CTC. If a family does have an expired ITIN, they can still claim the 2021 CTC by submitting a Form W-7 to renew their ITIN and filing a tax return. So, and again, we have a link there that will share more information on the process available through IRS. But the most important thing about this is to know that anyone with an ITIN already, whether it's expired or active, can still get the CTC. If a family or a parent has never applied for an ITIN before, they can no longer claim the 2021 CTC. If they file an ITIN now for the future, they can claim it in the future, but if there's no history of having had an ITIN, they unfortunately cannot claim the 2021 CTC. Next slide. Will an individual ever have to pay this money back? So the CTC is not a loan. That's very important to know. If someone receives payments for a child who is no longer their dependent, they may have to pay that money back. So this is probably a little less applicable at this point in time for some of the families we're trying to outreach to. A lot of the families we're trying to outreach to are probably families who didn't know they could claim this or don't have a tax filing obligation, so they didn't claim it. But if for some reason you run across somebody who maybe got the first half of the CTC in 2021 and just never filed taxes for this year, when they gave out the 2021 CTC early in July and December, they went off of 2020 or 2019 tax returns. So if for 2021 they made significantly more money, or if the child was actually no longer in their custody and they went ahead and claimed the second half of the CTC, even though the child wasn't in their custody or was in their custody for that 6 months in the day, there could be a possibility that those are the only cases where somebody might have to pay back the money. But there are protections for those with incomes below 40,000. So 50,000 for heads of households or 60,000 for married couples, and more limited protections for those with incomes below 80,000 as individuals, or 100,000 single head of household, 120,000 for couples filing jointly. Again, this might not come up as much at this point in time because a lot of the families we're outreaching to and we think haven't gotten any of the credit at all whatsoever. But in case this does come up, whether somebody ended up making a lot more money in 2021 than what was used by the IRS to get the advanced CTC in the second half of 2021, or they got a credit for a child that was no longer in their custody, this is important information for them. Next slide. What if someone has not filed tax returns in recent years? So people with very low incomes, like we talked about, those thresholds that qualified for getctc.org are generally not required to file. Even if they're required to file, there's generally not a penalty if the IRS actually owes somebody a refund. So, somebody didn't file taxes, but in actuality, if they had, they would have gotten money back. There's usually not a penalty for that. And as we mentioned, taxpayers can file for the past 3 years to receive the refunds they are owed. So, and this is also important, if someone owes child support or back taxes, we still would encourage them there is a benefit to claiming the CTC. I think there was a question about this in the Q&A as well. Because the credit will then go towards paying off the outstanding child support or taxes first, and they'll receive any amount left over. If all of it goes toward what is owed, that's going to reduce their debt. and it means they'll be able to get the credits in future years. And we might see a lot of that at this time of year, right? A lot of people who really didn't file because they owe taxes. This is actually a good opportunity for them to possibly pay off those taxes or back child support, things like that. Next slide. And then I quickly want to mention IRS Letter 6419. I want to mention this because if you run across families who received the first half of the CTC last year, but perhaps didn't file the taxes and get the second half, they would have gotten a letter from the IRS called Letter 6419 that shows how much they got for the CTC. If the amount listed on the letter does not match what a family received in advance CTC payments or believe they received, they should check the IRS online account for a more up-to-date amount and use that when filing tax returns. So there's been a little bit of a discrepancy on some of these letters, partly because some people might have moved, like if they got a check in the mail, instead of it being automatically debited, they got a check in the mail, but they moved, so they didn't receive that check. The IRS might have sent this letter saying, you got this money. The best place to go if anyone receives that letter and says, hey, I never got this money, or this isn't the right amount, is this IRS online account link. Next slide. So one of the other things we'll share with you, I'm going to pop all of these in the chat when we move over to Q&A, is we have 3 different toolkits that you can have access to. It's on our website, childtaxcreditoutreach.org. There are 3 different toolkits. The ones that will probably be most beneficial is the provider toolkit that we have, and then a toolkit that we specifically did for families. So that toolkit is really kind of the nitty-gritty documents, information, all these different resources we've talked about are in that toolkit. They're actually in both the toolkits, and you'll be able to access that on the main page of our website. If you scroll down, you'll see toolkits. But that will be available for you. It has lots of FAQs in there. A lot of the documents are in English and Spanish, and it's regularly updated. So any of the newest resources will be there and available for you. We recently added or are about to add a bunch of flyers that are ready to use in 11 different languages. And that has all of this information simplified about Get CTC and all of those things for you to have access to. And again, all of that's on our website. Next slide. And this is just a list of what's in the different toolkits. So we have flyers, we have posters, we have different sort of messaging. So if you need a script, like if you're sending mass text messages, we have some different scripts in there. We have different sort of social media available through some of our partners that put together, so ready to use images and scripts to put on your social media to share out. Again, we have the materials to help pick a tax preparer and get ready for an appointment. We have resources for immigrant families. We have different reports, things like that. So lots of great information that you'll be able to access through our toolkits. Next slide. And this is my contact information. Please feel free to reach out if you have any questions. Again, that's the getctc.org, Georgia CHW specific link. I will mention a couple things quickly. This particular presentation was supposed to have translation with it. Unfortunately, because of some last minute logistics, it didn't happen, but we are still doing 3 more trainings, one in July, one in August, one in September. All 3 of those will have interpretation. So if you'd like to hear this in Spanish, or if you have a coworker or anybody working in the CHW field in Georgia who could benefit from this presentation also in Spanish, please feel free to share that information. I will share the links for those registrations and the follow-up emails as well for that. Also, you'll get a follow-up email from me. We'll also most likely be following up with you with a very short, very quick survey in the coming weeks, just because we'd love to hear what you're experiencing on the ground in Georgia and what the specific needs are. Our surveys are really, really helpful for us in tailoring these presentations. So if we get some information back from you in the next few weeks about certain experiences, we can make sure, or certain questions, we can make sure that we incorporate them into future presentations and things like that. And with that, we'll open it up to Q&A. Let me just take a look if there's anything else. So Christine, I see you had a question. What if they have a balance due and haven't filed? Will CTC automatically be applied to their debt? We answered that. We answered that a little while ago. So yes, the CTC will be applied to their debt. I will pop a bunch of these links in the chat here in a second. I think we got to all the Q&As, but we'll give it another minute. And actually, you know what I might do, Zoe, real quick, is just show, I'm going to share my screen and show our website so people can see. So this is our website. The link, I think I already put the link in the chat. But to get to the toolkits, you'll just scroll down and you'll see Child Tax Credit Outreach Resource Toolkits. Usually this isn't open, but you'll click here, it'll open it up. And the ones that are probably most relevant to you are this first one, the Expanded Child Tax Credit Outreach Resource Toolkit for National, State, and Community Partners, and the Expanded Child Tax Credit Resources for Families. So if I click on one of these, Zoe, am I showing the toolkit on the screen or am I still on the website?
I'm seeing the Google Doc for the toolkit.
Okay, perfect. So this is what the toolkit looks like. There's all sorts of different information here. You can click on to go to the specific section. We also have information on other tax credit like the EITC and resources. And we have information on the USAC Affordable Connectivity Program. And this is a program that's launched to help people access and afford internet. So it's a credit that's available for people. So lots of great information on this. I think a lot of the same community members might also benefit from this as well. So that's there for you to access and see. So I'll stop the share. Okay, great. So if no one has any further questions, we will wrap up now. Like I said, all of this will be sent to you via email and a follow-up email. You'll get this recording, you'll get the full presentation, you'll get all the links, and anything that was shared on this presentation. Please feel free to reach out if you have any questions. And yeah, it was a pleasure to share all this information with you. CHWs, you guys are really some of the best trusted messengers that are out there. That's why we wanted to do this presentation. And I know that you having this information can be really impactful to families in Georgia. So looking forward to hearing how things go in the future. And thank you so much for joining us today.